Before we go on to anything else, I actually just want to give a quick overview for anyone who's really not familiar with the Julian Assange case, or maybe has been fed a lot of misinformation about it, because that really seems to be the only thing available by corporate media. So Julian Assange is the founder of WikiLeaks, and so he was publishing government documents from world governments all over the world, right? These usually pertain to corruption and war crimes, and everything was going just fine until he started exposing U.S. war crimes. The really famous one is known as collateral murder. If you haven't seen the video, please go watch it. It's a little difficult to find, but you can find it on the WikiLeaks Twitter page. They posted it on April 11th, several times, I think. And so this particular video shows a U.S. helicopter crew in Iraq gunning down a couple of civilians, a couple of kids, and 2 Reuters journalists. They then circle back around and kill the first responders as well. Good guy stuff. WikiLeaks has also published other things. If you may remember when it came out that the DNC rigged the election against Bernie back in 2016, that was also WikiLeaks. For all this, he obviously came under fire from the U.S. government. However, Obama declined to actually persecute him. This was referred to as the New York Times problem, which was the New York Times also published the information on collateral murder, which was, again, the helicopter gunning down civilians video. And he realized that, listen, I mean, if I'm going to go after Assange, that would mean I would also have to go after the New York Times for exposing this crime and publishing it more specifically. And he didn't want to do that. Now, Donald Trump came into office, and as much of the anti-deep state, anti-establishment, anti-corruption guy as he branded himself to be, he really kind of disproved this by allowing his administration to be the one that actually started the prosecution of Assange and trying to get him extradited out of what was at that time the UK. It has also since been revealed, Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone did some great work on this, where Mike Pompeo, at the time CIA head, and Trump were discussing kidnapping him from the Ecuadorian embassy and even potentially assassinating him as well. Again, good guy stuff. And so this, of course, just kind of puts to rest the notion that Trump was fighting the deep state. That, and also, I mean, even if you don't believe that story, which you don't have to, I mean, it's proven, but you don't have to believe it, you can just simply look at the fact that Trump declined to pardon Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. And if you really wanted to give a giant dick punch to the deep state, that's the first thing you do. But he waited 4 years and then didn't do it. He instead pardoned a couple of his buddies who were provably corrupt, and a couple of rappers, because that was more important. So anyways, that puts that myth to the rest. But anyways, so here's where we are. Now, the Biden administration, for all of its talk about how, Trump was going after freedom of the press and free speech, we can't allow this. The Biden administration is continuing to go through with the extradition. So Merrick Garland, the new DOJ head, is continuing to push, working with Priti Patel and Boris Johnson in England to get him over here. And it looks like that's how that's going to play out. And once he gets here, it's basically over. He's going to be tried in Virginia. This is going to be at the same court that convicted John Kiriakou, the Guantanamo Bay torture whistleblower. And it's considered to be pretty much a done deal. They have a 98% conviction rate down there, and it's Julian Assange with a Fed case facing 175 years in prison. They're going to bury him. Here's the precedent that this sets. This means that any journalist all over the world, if they expose U.S. crimes, can and probably will be extradited to the United States to face trial for telling the truth about the United States. The people who are going to jail are not going to be the criminals committing the acts. It will be the journalists who publish the proof of those acts. And so just to put this in context here, in case you're not totally convinced of this at this point, imagine if the U.S. journalists reporting on war crimes happening in the Ukraine had to go get extradited to Moscow. That's what this is. Imagine if U.S. journalists who were reporting on, let's say, Saudi Arabia, slaughtering gay people, like throwing them off of rooftops, or committing genocide in Yemen. Now we have to extradite our guys over there, right? So let's say, we send over some reporter from the New York Times or whatever to that country to stand a very unfair trial as a political prisoner for exposing the truth about that government. It's the exact same thing. And it's not any different because we're the ones doing it. Nils Melzer, the former UN guy on torture, actually wrote an entire book on this. You may have seen it kind of sitting behind me here. I want to read from the foreword real quick. I think he really sums up the deep hypocrisy and just the urgency of the case. All right, so page 3 from the introduction. The Assange case is the story of a man who's been persecuted and abused for exposing the dirty secrets of the powerful, including war crimes, torture, and corruption. It is a story of deliberate judicial arbitrariness in Western democracies that are otherwise keen to present themselves as exemplary in the area of human rights. It is a story of willful collusion by intelligence services behind the backs of national parliaments and the general public, manipulated and manipulative reporting in the mainstream media for the purpose of deliberately isolating, demonizing, and destroying a particular individual. It is a story of a man who has been scapegoated by all of us for our own societal failure to address government corruption and state-sanctioned crimes. It is thus also a story about each and every one of us, our lethargy, our self-deception, and our co-responsibility for the political, economic, and human tragedies of our time. Actually, I had some other stuff I was going to react to. There's a Russell Brand video from about a week ago that I wanted to go into. I will link it in the description so you can go watch it. But I think I've covered everything I wanted to say here. In a world full of lies and an empire of lies, telling the truth is a rebellious act. Stand up for truth, stand up for justice, demand that your elected representatives help put an end to the persecution of Julian Assange. Assange's appeal to avoid U.S. extradition has been denied by the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, which makes it very likely that he'll be dragged to the U.S. in chains to face trial for exposing U.S. war crimes, facing 175 years in prison if convicted. This would, of course, mean an end to investigative journalism and free press as we know it, so we all need to demand that our congressional representatives put an end to the extradition and prosecution of Assange. I have links down below in the description to help you get in touch with the elected officials. Write them, call them, demand an end to the persecution. Freedom of the press and the life of a genuine hero depend on it. Free Julian Assange.